Hello, Leo. My name's Uma. This is your horoscope for the full moon Mars conjunction in Gemini. Please be gentle with me. I have a Gemini moon. Hello, Leo. Welcome back. Thank you very much for being here with me on this fine day. And yes, there is a lot of conversation that will rear its head at this lunation. And I think for some more than others, there might be some real tension and difficulty that shows up for them at this time. So let's look out for the moment, Leo. Let's come to recognize what we know of Gemini, and then we can see how that is intermingling and relating with your chart. So Gemini is the great conversationalist, yeah? Gemini is representative of the twins. There's already a duality in the singular essence there. There's a light and a shadow, there's a good and an evil, there's a cooperation as well when working at its best. Gemini loves to think about the world around them. They love to absorb information and to translate it and then to share it with the other part of themselves. They're making choices all the time. They're making decisions and learning languages. So there's a great sort of almost like a frenetic sort of inquisition that can happen with Gemini. Quite useful, beautiful energy. At a full moon, when we know that the moon moves, our very selves, our water bodies are compelled to activate at a full moon. You know, in hospitals, they put on more staff. At the police station, they put on more staff as a matter of routine. So this we know. Couple that emotional upswell with that frenetic chatter of Gemini, and you can see how there might be some things revealed. There might be conversations that need to be activated. There might be extra connection, extra communication at this time. So a full moon in Gemini is already pretty effective and activated. This one is in a direct conjunction with Mars, who's in Gemini, has been there since I think the 20th of August, stationed retrograde, and is lingering, moving backwards to meet this full moon, this full lunation at 16 degrees of Gemini in exact conjunction. So in a lot of ways, it's like a full Mars as well. So the energy of Mars and the frustration of Mars in retrograde can be really felt. That fire mixed with the water of the moon, mixed with the air of thought in Gemini, has a real possibility of something quite combustive to occur, something quite disarming. We can feel annoyed, we can feel frustrated, we can feel quick to anger around this time. It's what we do with that feeling and how we communicate that and how we bring that to some form of resolution that will be the key. Mars longs to move ahead, to move forward. They only go around the zodiac, it takes them 2 years, not very long. To be in Gemini for 7 months as this is occurring, it won't leave until March 2023. This is of note and of importance. And so we can probably see this playing out in many different ways as far as aggressive communication. We look out, as we probably will for you, Leo, because let's face it, Gemini rules your 11th house, which is where we activate community. It's our thoughts and notions and ideas on the human species itself. We think global in the 11th house. We think holding hands with our brethren, our friendship groups. We think about getting along. We think about the possibility of gaining a greater sense of our own consciousness in that house as well. Great to have the conversationalist there for you, Leo. Great to have that active communication, that active exchange. Difficult to have that fire there. Difficult to have that anger, that rage. Now, I've said this to everyone. I think a lot of these readings are going to sound the same, but you know what? Who cares? This is an important lunation. I don't wish to suppress your rage or your anger in any way, Leo. I think that if you're here with me, we are kin. So we look out and we can see the continual stream of examples of oppressive language and of subjugation and of pain and war and violence. We look out the window and we can see it in action. This system that we're all living under, the way that the human condition is going at the moment, is incredibly polarized, incredibly split down the middle. And there are competing sides vying for some voice, some sense of articulation. All the while, at the apex of this system are the same tired, drudgery, rich, dusty individuals that are manipulating all of this for money and for power. And that is completely old school and needs to go. So in that way of looking out and empathizing and seeing yet again another example of violence against a marginalized community, another group of individuals that are frightened to express themselves for who they are, little on the internet, on the street itself. We must sort of separate ourselves in this idea of online communication being a great tool in order to bring us together in the physical realm. I think that's something that's really holding us back here. And so there's anger attached to that. There's rage that builds up when you can see oppression in action time and again and again and again in community, in your 11th house, in your concept of the human condition. So for that, Leo, I don't wish to silence you in any way. I don't wish for you to, rein it in or don't express yourself. How can I tell a Leo to not express themselves? I think, excuse me, I think what we want to do is how can we look out and actively help those in our direct environment around us that need a helping hand at this time, because this rage and this frustration and this anger is leading to all sorts of different damaging frames of mind. If we think of Gemini as definitely an air sign, an intellectual sign, a sign of the brain, and if we look to the tarot and if we consider the second decan of Gemini where this lunation is taking place, and also the card that does indeed represent Mars in Gemini in the tarot, is the 9 of Swords. And this is incredibly difficult energy to deal with in a reading when it comes up for a client, and also in our own lives when it shows up for ourselves. This is repetitious thought. This is Mars in action in Gemini's domain of the mind, of the brain. This is too many options, too many worries, too many fears. This is being stuck in the past, terrified of the future, held in place by our own mind. This is a crisis moment. This, for an individual, is the moment where you say to them, I adore you, and I think that it's time to take active steps for you to seek some help, some professional mental help, to be able to instigate a healthy conversation, a healthy Gemini conversation with someone who is trusted and who is trained. This can't be kept to oneself. The idea of holding that polarity, holding that difficulty with duality in the one body, in the one brain, with all of that Mars aggression is too much. And so in your beautiful, strident Leo way, I wonder if at this lunation, it might be something for you to consider if this is coming up for you, or if you can indeed look out to your 11th house, look out to your community and recognize and witness who is struggling right now because of the rage, because of the continual oppression, because of this hate and violence that we're consistently met with. A very wise friend of mine said, rage is valid, it's how we use it that is the key. And I think that this is probably a really great thing to put forward in this reading too, Leo. It's how we use that rage, how we channel it into the opposing force, which is not more fire, which is not more aggression, which is not more hatred and violence. It is, in fact, very cooling and very yielding and very powerful and full of love. I want you to think about the Strength card during this reading, Leo. That's your talisman. That's your talisman. And remember, what does strength bring up for us? What does this individual show us? That there is strength and power in an energy that is yielding and gentle and empathetic and caring and understanding and pure. There's something here that is against any form of weaponry, any form of a forward activation, a leading of any kind of charge. We want Mars to lead that charge for us through our communication. We can look forward to January the 13th when they station direct, and there'll be another moment of this thing moving forward and more decisions to make about how we're best going to work together, band together to resist this ugly wall of hate and violence. The opposite of love and sex and beauty and pleasure, all of those things that you're so good at, Leo. This is what we all want to come back to. And this is what your community is crying out for. So at this lunation, how can we manifest that? How can we bring that forward? How can we have you be the mouthpiece for us? That's another very interesting thing that I want you to think about in terms of your chart, my Leo risings, is that Gemini rules your 11th house. So in a lot of ways, your expressive self is the mouthpiece for all of us. And so through that, what are you saying and what are you putting forward and how are you channeling that rage on behalf of all of us? That's a cross to bear. Remember that you're not Atlas as well, Leo, but that's a lot to hold. And what skills, what activation, how can we hold one another's hands and get through this period of history? Because I tell you what, we need to hold hands. We need physical access to one another. We need to get together and we need to pray. We need to do our spell work. We need to cast out this hideous violence, this black cloud of hate and fear. Let's really think about it. All of these terrible emotions from the folks that are suppressed, their anger, their vitriol is coming from a place of fear because they've been told by an oppressive system that the other is the problem, not me, it's them. That's disgusting. We know that that's not true as well. So at this activation, this Gemini full moon, there's power here for you, Leo. I really feel that there's a great sense of you have control over this one. I think that you could be a really great use and service to your community. Absolutely, if this is showing up for you in your individual experience, then my darling, I wrap you up in a blanket and I want you to know right here, right now, that you are safe and that in this very moment, you are safe, Leo, and you're okay. If you're feeling that you have the stuff and are able to activate this moon, look out and see who it is in your community that's struggling. Reach out to them actively. Tell them that you love them. Ask them what they need. How can you be of service? How can you help? How can you use your Leo pride in order to aid their experience and aid their healing? That might be a great thing to do as well. You might want to look over to your 7th house. Now, I know that we've been talking about that a lot and it's been difficult to have Saturn in the 7th in Aquarius, squaring off with your own sense of your soul purpose. But I tell you what, there's a trine that's happening. Saturn is at 20 degrees of Aquarius. This lunation and Mars is at 16 degrees. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. Saturn is boundaries. Saturn is what we have learned. Saturn is karmic lessons that can come into play. So in your house of close relationship, of kinship, of coming together, your very important people in life, how do you feel protected by that space? What have you learned about your own experience and your own challenges, your own disparate push and pull between aggression and empathy. And how can that be brought in to help other folks right now? What have you learned from those that you love the most? And how can you take those lessons and provide them for your community at this lunation, in this life? The fire of Mars can be so destructive. The aggression of Mars can be so destructive. The confidence of Mars can be brilliant. The direction of Mars, the passion of Mars can be brilliant. You know of passion, Leo. You know of radical care, radical empathy, radical love. Let that heart beam out at this full moon, Leo, please, for all of our sakes. That's your reading. I apologize there was no intuitive tarot, but you know what? Who cares? I love you incredibly. Thank you very much for supporting my channel. Thank you for liking and subscribing to my work. Do head over to umaruby.com and I'll read your birth chart for you. I've opened my books up to Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays, Australian time, through December. So there's more options for bookings on the other side of the planet. I know that some folks were finding it difficult to find a decent hour in the Northern Hemisphere for a reading, so check it out. There's an extra day. I love you very much, Leo. You can hear my voice box is about to go. So I've got one more reading to go and then I'll have a rest. Until I speak to you in 2 weeks for the new moon in Capricorn, take care. Bye.